Welcome back. Dr. JC here. Tech and Society in the Ancient World. Left off last time talking about China. We're going to pick up with Persia today. Persia would be modern Iran. When talking about ancient Persia, we don't often think of Persians and Persian society as being this sort of cradle of science and technology. We often think of ancient Persia under the likes of Cyrus II, Cyrus the Great, or Cambyses, or Darius, or even Xerxes, who came behind him, where Persians owned much of the ancient world, to include conquering great civilizations like the Egyptians. Yet Persians should be remembered for their pioneering work in leadership in science and technology, whether it be through harnessing the wind, through wind power, storing energy in the form of batteries, this Parthian battery, or even thinking about sterilization as it relates to medicine. They are among the first to start to distill rubbing alcohol. All of these are advances that we can associate with Persian society. In addition to those innovations listed, Persians also proved themselves to be pretty savvy as it relates to engineering. One such example are these systems of qanats that they engineered. It was a way for them to move water from the more mountainous regions to the north into those sort of desert, dry, arid regions where much of their civilization existed. In addition to the rubbing alcohol mentioned previously, Persia was among the first civilizations to actually start medical training, certified training centers. Now, whether or not they had residency requirements, that's just not known to history like we would think of today. But we do know that, such as the academies at Gundishapur, that there were students that would practice on patients under the supervision of physicians. So formalized medical training did exist in ancient Persia. Persians such as al-Biruni or Abu Ali al-Hassan, known as al-Hazan in the West, were noted scientists, pioneers in some ways in their own rights. Al-Biruni would be an individual that puts together this astronomical encyclopedia, discusses this idea that maybe the Earth might rotate around the sun, long before this geocentric theory emerges in Europe and causes quite a stir in the Catholic Church too, by the way. Or how about Abu Ali al-Hassan or al-Hazan in the West? Here's an individual that's known as the father of optics. So if you have glasses today, in some ways you can thank this individual for that. He also pioneered this thing called the scientific method, that again we would sometimes relate with the scientific revolution, which would come much later in Europe. In addition to the pioneering work in science and technology already mentioned, I'd be entirely remiss if I failed to mention Persian spirituality or Zoroastrianism. Now look, I don't expect anybody to remember Zoroaster or that his teachings are housed in this spiritual book known as the Avesta or Zendavesta. But there are certain concepts here I want you all to think about, and I want you to think about how they may have impacted faiths that emerged after this one. Faiths such as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, Zoroastrianism itself had concepts of a heaven and a hell. An idea that if an individual did not live an upstanding life within the physical realm, once one passed over into the spiritual realm, maybe there were negative ramifications to that. That one's actions in the physical world could in some ways impact how one lived in eternity. Now, before we move next to ancient India, and then on from there to Egypt, Mesoamerica, and finally in Greece, I wanted to pose the following question as it relates to Persia, as a way to kind of maybe summarize what we've discussed here briefly. And I want you to think specifically about geography. Now, again, this isn't any sort of question that you need to answer in a forum or email response or anything like that, but something to consider. What impact did geography have on ancient Persia, whether it be Persian society or Persian advancements in technology, science, engineering at all? Again, how did geography impact Persia and Persian society? and technology. Dr. JC out here from ancient Persia. We'll move into ancient India briefly next.